end game is to be able to practice moment to moment the subtle art of letting yourself die. It's getting comfortable in those moments of tension where you just let go and you let God and you just allow whatever feelings, whatever insecurities, whatever things are there, and you just be in that process. And if you can get good at letting go, and if you can allow yourself to feel, and you get better at doing that on a regular basis, that to me is the gold standard. Welcome to the Stay Grounded podcast. I'm your host, Raj Jana, co-founder at Liberate, and it's my mission to help you become the most grounded, loving, and authentic version of yourself that you can be. Each week, I interview guests in the fields of mindset, spirituality, and emotional well-being. My brilliant guests share their tools, tips, and unique perspectives to help you develop the skills you need to show up for the people that matter most in your life. Now let's dive in. Yo, what's up, everyone? And welcome to this week's episode of Stay Grounded with my brother, Alex King. This specific episode is going to be a deep dive on something that I feel all of us in our lives are going to experience. If you're not experiencing it right now, then you are one of the few. I feel like there's a season for this, but it's going to be about letting go of control. And I'm going to get honest about my own relationship with control, how I've learned to shift the constructs that are keeping me stuck inside of needing to know, needing to have the plan, needing to have certainty. And we're going to make this a really organic dialogue between two brothers around our own personal relationships to control and how we can all create a little more grace as we navigate wild times where there's lots of changes and astrological transits, and just feels like there's like a whole shakeup happening in the world. And the ones that are going to be most, not even successful, but that are going to feel the most empowered are going to be the ones that learn to let go. So, Alex, so glad to be here with you, brother. Excited to dive in.
I'm excited about this topic because it's something that I think everybody struggles with this, but my life especially has been this journey of like try to control things, be shown that I'm not in control, and then have to let go. And over and over and over. And so I'm curious for you how you think about, how do you even realize when you're trying to control your life? Like, how does that come up for you?
For me, it comes up in the form of like tension. It's like I'm really trying to make this thing happen. And there's like healthy tension, like there's other, and this is where it's a balance of like, willpower of like, okay, like I'm going to put everything in my power to push. Right. And I think that's really beautiful. Like one of the most beautiful things about being human beings is the fact that we have willpower, we have identity, we have ego. And so like to will our way into success, into making things happen is a beautiful quality. But when you're pushing, and you keep falling short, or you keep, it's like there's a pattern at play, or there's something that's just like preventing this deep level of ease from existing. That's when I like to think of like, okay, like where can I let go of more control? Mm-hmm. Where can I have more grace in this process? Where can I allow myself a little more compassion and forgiveness? Where can I just like stop trying and and see if God, the universe, higher power can just figure this out for me? Mm-hmm. And I find that human beings, especially ones named Raj, work really hard to try and make everything happen, make things happen. And like, so my work in letting control is like, can I just like not, what if I said less? What if I moved slower? What if I did less? What would change? That to me is my medicine and how I work inside of triggers. Or not triggers, it's how I work inside of the tension points, which triggers are tension points, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Like those are, like when you have a large amount of triggers showing up, like it's like, okay, how can we take a breath and come back to ourselves? How can we create more safety? And safety to me is different than security. Security is a function of the mind, which is ultimately something that's created by control.
Mm-hmm.
But when our security is challenged and it's rubbed up against, that's when like I come back to safety. How can I access a deeper well of safety by knowing that I'm held by a benevolence greater than me? Right? And that's safety, and to fall back into that is part of the deep work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really the difference between control and trust are two different sides of the coin. And when I realized that every time I was trying to force something or really make something happen, it was because at some level I didn't trust that God had it all figured out already, and that it might be better than I could even imagine. And even in my mind, even if the reality is worse right now than what I would have wanted to happen, that it is part of some bigger plan, that it's part of some greater unfolding that's happening. And that way, when things happen now, I'm like, I guess I'm supposed to go this way. Instead of going, no, this can't happen, to whatever it is, whether it's a relationship or a work thing or personal life. Like when I notice that you're right, it's like a tension point. It's like I get tight, I want things to be a certain way so badly that I will do and try to arrange the world around me to fit that certain way, instead of like taking a step back internally and going, what's actually going on here? And why do I feel such an attachment to this outcome that I'm trying to get to?
I think that's the piece too, right? Like our attachments are ultimately directly proportional to our level of control, right? So the larger we are attached to this thing needing to look a certain way, be a certain way, that's when we really start to work from the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so it's really useful. Like, why are we so attached, right? Like if everything is impermanent, we're all going to die one day, right? Like the waves were crashing before we were born, and the waves will be crashing after we are gone. Life is happening with or without us controlling anything, right? And so there's this idea of like, okay, like, why am I so attached to this relationship and the way this relationship needs to be? What's within me? Is there a belief system that I'm never going to find something more aligned? Is there a fear of feeling the depth of rejection? Like, what am I attached to? Am I attached to feeling a certain way? Am I attached to looking a certain way? Am I attached to a certain story I have about myself? And those are the pieces that are so tricky, right? Because they feel like it's the end of the world, because it is in some ways. If we let go of our attachments to who we are, to what we have, to what we want, then what do we latch onto?
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary to the ego, right? That's scary to this part of ourself that is so rooted in needing to have all the plans and all the things figured out, and a survival aspect. And so it's deeply spiritual to let go of control, because it's forcing you then to examine your attachments and to be okay with not having attachments, and to access a deeper level of trust that some benevolent life force energy around us is orchestrating everything to be in the highest and best good of all parties involved. And that may create moments of tension and feelings that are yours to feel, right? Like this is where your triggers are your treasures, right? Like these triggers are meant to be looked at and experienced and moved through. But it's I think I have a different frame now around this whole concept of control. And it's helped me a lot, because I do think, attachments are difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Attachments are really hard to examine, especially when there's a lot of stakes, when it's like a high stakes relationship, or when it's a high stakes business or something that's like, really, you want it to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's just the human tendency. And and that can become very dark very quickly if we are not able to then step back and go, okay, if I did my best, if I tried my hardest, even if I didn't try my best, that's the hardest part for me, is like, even if I messed up intentionally or unintentionally, it's really hard for me to go, I guess it's just the plan. I guess that's just God's plan.
This one's so tough for me too. Like I'm not a master at it. It's when you feel like you could have done better, then you're like, all right, let me roll up my sleeves and do better.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually want to feel the feeling that you are not enough. No, like, so there's a feeling that I don't want to feel. So I'm like, I'm actually going to do everything in my power to prove to myself that I am enough, to prove to this person that I'm not this thing. It's like, okay, like there's those feelings. Like, what if you allowed yourself to just not be the best enough, to not have all the answers? What if you just allowed yourself to fall? What would happen? What would break? What would let go? What would die? That to me is the great mystery. That to me is the great unfolding. That to me is the great uncovering. That to me is the great inquiry of life, right? Like, what would happen if I actually let go?
Yeah. And you get I think that those moments are a gift because it's rare that we actually do get to the end of ourselves, because we are very capable and powerful in some ways, beings that I can effort my way usually into a better result. I can try really hard and fix a situation or mend a broken thing, but there's a lot of times where you can't. You know, what happens if you don't get closure from a relationship? What happens if somebody passes away? What happens if in these times when you can't just go back and fix it? And those are the times where it's hardest for me probably to trust and to let go of control. But I'm so grateful for those moments because those are gifts that we're shown. You have the option to step into deeper trust when there's actually nothing that you can do about the situation at hand. And I've had to be shown over and over again through those moments, which are the hardest ones, because if there's even an ounce of something that I can go do to make the situation better, I will do it because I don't want to feel that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and also and I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's a beautiful quality. You know, it's a beautiful quality to want to strive to be our best, right? The piece that I find is the reactionary nature of the striving, you know? Like, there's lots of things that we can control in any given moment, but when we are afraid of feeling a certain feeling, the control becomes frantic. And the control becomes like, it's like, oh my God. It's like there's like a gripping nature to it. There's like
it's very frenetic.
Very frenetic, right? And that to me is the piece that I like to examine, the frenetic, tense nature of control, not necessarily the empowered nature of action, right? Like, it's beautiful to come from an empowered space of inspired action that is you taking full agency of your life and making choices that are in deep alignment with your truth. That's fucking amazing. I love that. But like all the other pieces, the tenseness, that's what I have to be honest, like when I'm here, there's something that's out of alignment. There's something that's out of alignment. There's something that's creating a sense of dis-ease, unease that's causing this. And that's when I am now practicing letting go. It's like, okay, in those moments, instead of trying to like fix, create, do, can I just like let go? And can I be with the uncomfortable emotion of letting go and whatever that means about me? And can I let that be an opportunity to examine my deeper relationship with myself? Right? Because ultimately, I think this entire life game of us evolving as a soul is about ascending beyond those constructs that keep us stuck. And it's liberating those constructs that keep us stuck so that we can be in more alignment with just the nature of life. Nature knows. She's so brilliant. She has this deep, deep, deep wisdom. And we've just gone so far from being connected to that wisdom. And that's what I think this whole game is about. And it's been a long road. I would say I'm light years ahead of where I started, and I feel like there's light years more for me to go. You know, and that's part of the beauty, and it's just part of the beauty.
Yeah, and there's not really a place to get to either. I mean, it's just there's a flow. I think that I like to imagine that there's a natural flow of life, and when I'm out of alignment with that, I've started to ask myself the question, what is this trying to show me that I'm not willing to see right now?
You know, I would actually offer that there is an end game. And the end game is to be able to practice moment to moment the subtle art of letting yourself die. It's getting comfortable in those moments of tension where you just let go and you let God and you just allow whatever feelings, whatever insecurities, whatever things are there, and you just be in that process. And if you can get good at letting go, and if you can allow yourself to feel, and you get better at doing that on a regular basis, that to me is the gold standard. Because that to me is the healthy process of being human inside of this complicated world that is so dysregulating on so many levels, especially in 2024, 2025. Like, you know, like this time period we're alive in with social media and AI and technology and everybody fighting for our attention and complex relationship structures and personal growth and evolution. And it's just like there's so much nuance and complexity to this time period we're alive in. And I really do feel this this deep medicine that can come from actually knowing that there is somewhere we can get to.
Yeah.
And that can be found by just practicing the art of being alive inside of these tense moments with a little more presence, with a little more breath, with a little more awareness, with a little more permission, with a whole lot of compassion and grace and love. And then coming back to anchoring in those principles. I am held. I am safe. I am enough. I've got this. It's going to be okay. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. All the mantras. And anchoring in those mantras as a way of you truly moving through the world with a lens of deep grace.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because it's the word abiding of like really, it's this deep level of trust in every single moment as it comes. And when I think about there is a place to get to in our work world, in our business world, we think, okay, well, next quarter I'm going to do this. And then by the next year I'll be there. And then, but in this case, it is, you're able to get to that place, but it is a moment to moment thing. It's not in 5 years, I will be able to abide fully in these moments. You're always going to go through those triggers and wanting to control and then not. And for me, I find that like every moment there is a choice to let go and surrender into the now. And that, what you just said, the subtle art of dying is like dying to the self, dying to the need to control, dying to these parts of us that keep us stuck in that moment and releasing and going, actually, I'm just going to allow what needs to happen. And sometimes that might mean I need to work really hard or I need to put in a lot of effort to this thing. But other times it might mean I need to let this thing go or I need to just sit back and watch what unfolds. And so I love that you said that because it's so true that in every single moment we have the option to get to that place of abiding. And then when we're not there, we always have the option to come back. And I do think that's a worthwhile and worthy goal of how many moments of today could I be in that trusting place?
Totally. And that's part of progress, right? I think of progress in this work. We talk about this a lot at Liberate. Like, what does it mean to actually grow as a human being? Right? Like there's this personal development world and it's all about skill accumulation, but what skills actually matter? Right? To me, it's like emotional regulation. It's being able to anchor in belief systems that allow you to have a more holistic and connected way of being. It allows the willingness to just pause, allow, abide, create with the moment. I mean, the more you just practice being alive consciously, and the more you practice really actually being with the triggers, like I come back to triggers being the most valuable thing that we can be examining, diagnosing, like organizing around. Like it's like that piece of that thing that's here, the desire to control, the tension, the piece that I'm fighting. What am I fighting for and why? And getting so good at asking ourselves those questions and being able to glean the lessons that come during these moments. My gosh, that is progress. That is your ability to do that is exceptionally valuable. It's exceptionally worthwhile. It is a worthy pursuit to develop your own skill set to become more aware and resilient in times of moments of tension. And that to me is what I think my work, my personal work in the world is. It's my work through Liberate. It's what we teach on this podcast. To me, this is the stuff that matters most. The more we can get good at being inside of the moments that are not good, the more we access our own internal deep well of greatness.
And so when we find ourselves in those controlling places, the work then, I guess, is to just remember that other place is always there. That there is always a connection to the deeper source of truth, to God inside you, that you have. And I heard this once, and it made an impact, super big impact on me. And it was somebody said, just gave the question, what would it be like if you prayed every minute of every day? And what would your life look like if it was one continuous prayer? If everything was, you were simultaneously connected to God and connected to here at the same time. That's kind of what we're talking about, this abiding sense, is like I'm trusting fully and I'm fully present. And for me, like a practical way to do that is like, sometimes if I feel very disconnected or dysregulated or frenetic, I'll go, could I just pray every 20 minutes today? Could I remind myself to for just a second, bring my attention back to God? Because every time I do that, I'm reminded, whatever I'm experiencing right now, whatever I'm feeling, I'm so in right now, there's a deeper part of me that's not in that at all. It realizes that this is the game, this is the situation, this is the trigger, and that's not the true version of me. Mm-hmm. But and the more that I can do that, the more that I find that I abide in that deeper, like, well of trust, and it makes the biggest difference in the world. And so I would just invite anybody listening to just, however often it suits you, like, to redirect your attention to that thing that you can trust above all else, because it'll pull you right out of whatever you're experiencing.
That's it, man. These anchor insights. That's what I like to call these, like, these principles, these anchor insights, these things that are like whatever insight you can access to remember that you are part of nature. You are held by God. There is a greater intelligence orchestrating your life. You may have to remind yourself of that 100 times a day, but man, the more you do that, the more you just integrate and live as that, the more graceful your life gets. And that, to me, is why I believe we call in challenging moments and experiences, so we can break open to that level of evolution, right? Like, we are evolving as beings. Like, we don't evolve in the same way that monkeys did into human beings, like by growing hair and limbs. Like, I think we're beyond the age of the physical evolution, and now it's a consciousness evolution, where our consciousness is evolving every moment we meet these challenging life circumstances. And in these breaking points, we have an opportunity to rise into a more evolved way of thinking, a more evolved way of being, a more evolved set of principles and belief systems that are here to help us anchor in deep, deep, deep divinity and truth. And I am so unbelievably grateful for every moment that I have been met with resistance, because I would not be the man I am today without that. And I'm not perfect. I don't have it all figured out. And that's part of the beauty too. Beauty is being able to experience even richer and deeper access points within life. And that, to me, is a really beautiful thing.
I agree. This is a great conversation.
Yeah. Really, really, really glad that we dropped in to have it. And Alex, I love you. Everybody, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj, and this is your old friend, Alex. And from us, stay grounded. Chat soon.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Stay Grounded. No matter where you're from or what you're going through, I hope it helps you remember just how incredible you are and have always been. If you're on a path of emotional healing or self-discovery and would like to learn how Liberate can support your journey, head to www.rajana.com/liberate. That is LIBER 8 to learn more about our current group programs and one-on-one offerings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.